Hi, Steve.
Hi, Jim.
Hey, did you happen to catch our Stores Drop video on Friday?
Yes, I did.
I'm just curious if you were interested in any of those albums by The Move.
No, not at all.
Hello again, everyone, and welcome once again to Two Guys Talking About Records, a vinyl community podcast where each week we two guys get together and talk about records. Simple as that.
It's simple as that, yes.
My name is Jim, and I'm a record store owner, but man, I'm having some conflicting issues with being a collector this week.
And I am Steve, and I'm a record collector. I have zero conflicting issues. I just spend money.
Go with it. How's that New Year's Eve or New Year's resolution going?
Well, I went to one record store. I did really well. I went to another record store. I sucked.
Mine are not going well either, but we'll get to that here in a little bit. The subject at hand this week is kind of a follow-up to the announcement we made last week, and which you've been talking about on your channel, and that is and holy cow, it's getting here quick. We're almost into February. Your impending move.
Yeah.
Out and away from the wonderful sunny skies of Michigan.
Yeah, really nice. The depression of cloudy skies every single
Welcome to
day.
January, February, Michigan, where we have a false winter and pre-spring.
Yep. Well, I was since Saturday. I was thinking I only got 4 weeks left of work, and then I looked at the calendar. It's 5 weeks. Boy, was that depressing.
You're getting there, and it's going to get here very fast.
It will.
And, today we're going to talk about moving with your records, which is something you're going through. You've gone through it before as well.
Yes, a number of times.
Is this the largest?
It's not the largest, but it's the first time I'm doing it.
Okay, so we'll dive into that. I have moved with records a couple of times. One big, longer move like you're doing, but I've also moved a record store. So this is interesting too. So we'll talk about that, some maybe tips and pointers for those of you who will be faced with this at some point in time, and maybe just some griping on our parts about what it's like to go through that. Yep. But before we get to that, and before we get to our pickups this week, I need to mention something. I caught your Sunday video on your channel, the Steve Carlson Vinyl Community channel on YouTube this morning, where you talked about going to hell because of that Black Sabbath album, right?
Yes, that's right.
We talked about that when you picked that up a while back. That's the first Black Sabbath album. But I'd like to point out something if I could.
Yeah.
The Black Sabbath album, which we talked about, you mentioned you were initially, A, it's Black Sabbath, but B, the cover was a little spooky. It's that kind of off color of an old English country house with a very spooky looking woman sitting in front of it.
Yeah.
While you were delivering your message on that today on your channel, over your shoulder, you're worried about the going to hell because of that Black Sabbath cover.
Yeah.
Over your shoulder was the Lords of Acid cover with multiple naked female demons frolicking sexually. So I could not help but think of the irony in you saying, I'm going to go to hell for looking at this very tame, by now standards, Black Sabbath album when that one was over your shoulder.
Well, it's trying to give me a better thought about hell. Maybe, okay, it won't be so bad.
Well, if it looks like the Lords of Acid album cover, there you go.
Yes.
Apologies, folks, because this is not visual, but even if it were, we would get in trouble on YouTube and Facebook for showing that one. If you need to, head over to Steve's channel and look over his shoulder at that one. It's there as we speak.
We're going to find out because next week that's being shown. So we're just going to see what happens.
How far? Well, maybe you won't have to worry about your channel continuing at that point. Just don't play any piano in front of Chinese people. You'll be all right. No, I'm kidding. Okay, on to the pickups. This is a vinyl community podcast, so we like to talk about the things that we brought into our collections personally each week. And how was yours this time around?
It was pretty good. There was some stuff that I wanted last year. There was a couple reissues that I wasn't able to pick up. And I went online. You weren't able to get them. I went online to all the big record stores. They were totally sold out. And I found them this week in a little brand new record store in Grand Rapids. Mm-hmm. And so one of them was the Sundays, Reading, Writing, and Arithmetic.
Okay.
Haven't been able to find it. I still have my vinyl, my original OG vinyl for this. But there it was. That was just The album came out originally in 1990, and this is the 2023 reissue. Just a wonderful, when you think 90s music, the Sundays, though they only had a few albums, this was such an iconic album to start the decade. The other one that I had been looking for was X-Ray Specs. They re-released Germ-Free Adolescence.
Okay.
Now, I never had an original of that one. That was released originally in '78, but again, they put it out last year, and I snoozed on that one too. Couldn't find it anywhere, and it was just sold out. But there they had it, and I was shocked. And the price that thing goes for that reissue now is crazy. Well, actually, the Sundays was a crazy price too, but the store hadn't marked them up. He just goes, "No, if someone finds it, it's a great deal for them." So he pointed one of them out to me because we had a good conversation in there. So yeah, those are great. The Pale Saints was another album I found, and this was. This album came out in 1990. This was a 2020 reissue, The Comforts of Madness. And the Pale Saints was one of the early shoegaze groups out of the UK. And so this is a nice example of early shoegaze, and really happy to get that thing. I've wanted something from the Pale Saints, but haven't ever seen anything.
Were they on that big shoegaze compilation you picked up last year?
They were on that, yes.
Okay.
And the final one was picked up here. You brought in the Cramps, You Better Duck,
Yeah.
and it was their live album that they did, down in Detroit. And the recording on that's really good.
Which for Cramps bootlegs you don't always get.
Yes, I have a number. I have way too many Cramps bootlegs. Let's first just start with that, and some of them are really rough, but later ones now are definitely better. Technology, everything, maybe they can clean them up so it sounds pretty good. So yeah, that pretty good week, but I found some things I've really been wanting, so that was exciting.
Cool.
Now, what about you? I mean, what kind of sins have you been up to?
Well, it's an interesting one. We'll get to my conundrum here in a second. 3 pickups, what I would say normal ones, and then one interesting one. Kept a copy of Genesis Duke from 1980. I don't have a lot of that early Genesis with Gabriel. I don't collect. I'm not into that as much, which is odd considering I like some of that prog stuff.
Yeah.
But some of the early Genesis, I guess I still have to really kind of fine tune in on that. But I like the earlier, not quite top 40 Phil Collins Genesis. Abacab is a favorite album of mine. I've had that. I think we talked about the varying variants of covers on that one before in the podcast. But a nice copy of Duke came through, and I gave it a listen. I thought I could sit with this one for a while. This is a good album. Just kind of a nice generic ad. The second one was the Smithereens, a new release-ish from the Smithereens. And I say ish because this was recorded in the 90s, but they're calling this the Lost Album. And we're fans of the Smithereens, my wife and I both. I've got some of their earlier stuff, the Blood and Roses, and she likes 11, but they go from that mid-'80s all the way into the 90s. In between record labels, the Smithereens had gone in to record this album, and then it never got released. It kind of fell through the cracks. The master tapes were lost in a fire, so they had to cobble these together with this technology you mentioned.
Okay.
And I was a little apprehensive hearing that, but it actually sounds really good. It's very reminiscent of the later Smithereens, the late 80s, early 90s type of Smithereens. That is a little more rockier, a little less alternative sounding. Yeah. And there's a couple of just real nice guitar bangers on this one as well. So the Smithereens, the Lost Album, that was kind of a no-brainer to add to my collection, our collection. And I did get a couple for the store. And the cooler thing is, this was released, I think, on CD in 22. But they never got around to releasing the vinyl version of it until just this past week, and that's when that came out. And from what I'd seen, it's a limited edition to 1,000 pressed of this. Maybe they're testing the waters with that on really kind of a neat gold metallic vinyl and a very nice, expansive gatefold with lots of cool stuff.
Every time they say a lost album, I just keep thinking they went into a closet at home and go, well, what's that? Oh, that's where we put those tapes
Literally,
at.
but
yes.
This is something I think they knew about, and then one of the members passed away a couple of years ago, and I think a lot of it took kind of a back seat to other things happening in life, and now
Sure.
they're finally getting around to it. And they had it cleaned up, and it's not bad at all. It's the smithereens. We joke about the AC/DC saying, well, all our stuff sounds alike.
Yeah.
I can hear people kind of griping about that with the smithereens, but there's a nice, I think, reliability in that. When you've got a group that you enjoy, it's okay if their albums sound alike, then they're doing what they feel sounds good.
Yeah, true.
So that was a neat ad, and I'm happy to have that in there. But now here comes an interesting one. I think it was last November or so, we talked about John Fahey, this almost classically trained guitarist who kind of did blues in the late 50s and early 60s. I've had a Christmas album of Fahey's forever, and I did some digging, and I think we did talk about this one, Blind Joe Death, and I picked up a reissue of that back in, I think, November or so,
Yeah.
simply because I wanted some more of his stuff. And it's good, and I had to do a little more research on this, and boy, did I, because lo and behold, and here's my problem, one of the boxes in the back of the store that I have been, for lack of a better term, deodorizing, I put some bounce dryer sheets in, and
Yeah.
stuff's a little aromatic, and then I let it sit, theoretically, for 6 months. This one's been there since 2021. I found the note in the box, and I thought, well, what's this box? I better go through this. And then lo and behold, there's an earlier pressing of John Fahey's Blind Joe Death, Volume 1, and I just kind of did that little forehead slap. So, well, I guess I'll put the reissue out. A couple things I want to talk about this. Would you consider stepping backwards to an early 70s pressing of a 1959 album an upgrade from a 2010 reissue?
I would, just because it's more vintage.
It's much more vintage. But then I dug into this, and now I am totally and completely beside myself on what to do. I am going to keep this pressing. There's no date on this particular one that I ID'd in Discogs, but they say that the label, it's a Tacoma label, but it's got the gold dragons on the label, which means that it's prior to 1972. So even though this doesn't have a date, I'm pegging this as either 1970, 71, or 72. The problem is that this album from John Fahey, after I've done some research on this, originally released in 1959, a self-release, one of the first artists to do a self-release album in that era. A very limited edition, according to Wikipedia. Discogs doesn't even have this. The album is in Discogs, mind you. The 1959 version is in Discogs, but it is never sold. 9 people on Discogs have it. 340 want it. I've not been able to find the 1959 version of this on PopPsych or eBay, and I think there's a lot of frauds out there that claim that it's a 1959, but it is not based on my research. But according to Wikipedia, this album was initially released in 1959 on a very limited edition, with one side of the record credited to a mythical bluesman named Blind Joe Death. The other side was credited to Fahey himself. As I mentioned, one of the first albums recorded and produced by an independent artist and self-released on Tacoma, a record label which did not formally exist until 1963. So he just kind of pulled this out, called it Tacoma Records in 59. From what I can tell, the initial run of this album was fewer than 100 copies.
Wow.
In 1959, making it a tremendously rare Grail album if you ever find it. Now, if you're not familiar, we'll put the link, as we always do, to a Spotify playlist on the description and on our Facebook page, so you can listen to what these are. The Fahey stuff is it's very sparse and very kind of dark and depressing guitar blues, and we're talking just a guitar and a guy singing. So it's like that early Appalachia stuff that we talked about once before. It's good. I almost said fun, because it's not really fun. It's just very down and gritty guitar blues. It's really neat. So I got digging into this a little deeper, and I don't know where to go with this, Steve. So the original version, released in 1959, was out there as his self-release. A few years later, as he started releasing more music and got a little more popular, Tacoma Records started taking off. He decided to re-release that first album, but in doing so, he re-recorded it.
Okay.
So there's the second version of this then not only had a different song lineup, it was re-recorded versions of the songs from the first, because, as Fahey said, he learned to play the guitar better by that time. So what I have here, the one I picked up from our back room, is further down the line. So 59, the next issue after 59, The redone one was in 64. So that's a little bit of time to pass between him releasing those two versions. This one that I've got, a completely different cover, as you can see here, was in early 1971. That is the track listing from the 1964 reissue. So now all of a sudden I've got this thought in my mind, well, I've got to find that original 59 to have that original track listing and that very bare bones type of stuff to look for. And I don't think that's one of those ones, fewer than 100, I doubt I will ever in my lifetime see that.
Never say never.
Never say never. I know, things that happen. So the 64 one, in looking at this, that still goes for about $400 to $500. The 1964 version on Discogs. Again, there's no sales record of the 59 version at all. The one that I've got here, it's respectable, floats between 20 and 75. And this one's in really nice shape too, but it's a completely different cover. Which cover do you prefer, Steve? I'm curious here.
Well, this one from the 70s has a guy playing guitar, and then it looks like Caligula going on. It's pretty pornographic in a drawing sort of way.
In ancient Greek,
yeah,
or Roman. How's that?
Yeah. There's they're an excited bunch of people.
Whereas the 2010 reissue that I did bring in and I put out on the shelf at the store here is basically just a white album with black lettering and his name on the front and Blind Joe Death on the back, which is a recreation of the 1959 release of that. So the cover is paying tribute to that 59 and the 64 one, although on the back cover you can see they've got the 70s issue on that as well.
It's quite the artwork.
So, yeah, it is. I guess I won't call it an upgrade in that fashion, but a good side grade maybe to go to an older version of an album with a completely different cover, but the same song lineup until that mythical day that I run into that 59 one.
Well, and that's part of collecting. Okay, so we get something like that, and you only really need one of an album, but here's a case where you do have two different covers, and so as a collector, yes, it is a conundrum because it's you want them both.
Yes, you do. In this case, though, I'm good because that is a later 2000s reissue on the original cover. I can do without that because they're the same music on each.
Yeah.
Okay, so now what I'm having trouble with, moving and changing the subject, before we get to moving,
yes,
Steve is going to laugh at me, folks. Please bear with me. Steve is going to laugh because...
Is that another Rush album?
No, it's not another Rush album.
Oh, my God.
Let me bring out my Pink Floyd Dark Side of the Moon, which... if you've been listening to our podcast, you know that this is not my favorite Floyd album, but for some reason, as Steve has pointed out, I seem to have multiple copies of this.
Yeah,
so
I think we all do.
We had my resolution has been broken solidly because I've been buying like crazy in the past 2 weeks here at the store.
Yeah,
a lot of stuff, and a lot of primo stuff has come in, including one now that is making me question whether or not I need a fourth copy proper of Dark Side of the Moon.
So that's also questioning sanity here. So we have not that, but sanity is part of this. Okay.
So what I'm showing Steve is my original. This is the one I've had forever and a day. This is my 1973 U.S. copy of Dark Side of the Moon on Harvest Records.
It has all the cool stuff there?
It has the cool stuff. I've got the two stickers and the two posters. The other thing that popped in later in my collection was the MoFi, the original master recording. Okay, that's good. You can keep two copies when one's an original master in good condition, right?
I have that. Yes.
Okay, so we're good there.
Except I don't have the cool stuff.
A little while later, and I'm trying to think of how long ago this was. It says, let me look at my little notes here. When I added this in, almost a year ago, I got a UK copy of Dark Side of the Moon.
Okay,
they're a British band, so you need a UK copy, right?
Sure. If you can justify it, okay, I guess that's all right then.
But here's the thing. This UK copy is a 1977 reissue. It's not the original. So the original UK one, I would jump on that in a heartbeat, but it's also worth thousands of dollars.
Okay.
With all the stuff because it's a different type of label on that and everything. This is still a Harvest, but it's a later Harvest from the 70s. So I've had that UK one in simply because, well, my rationale is Pink Floyd's a British band, so I have to have a UK press, right?
Isn't it just kind of scary that it's exact same music, but because there's a different label, suddenly it jumps up $1,000 and some dollars. There is there is something definitely wrong with record collectors.
We're getting into the psychology of it,
Yes.
which we're going to talk about more down the
Yes.
line. Okay, so this week, I need to bring this out and show Steve. I landed a Japanese copy, a 1978 Japanese
Oh, wow.
copy of Dark Side of the Moon. Now, this one, I'm hemming and hawing whether it's going to go on the shelves at the store simply because it is a bigger ticket item. They sit for a while, so if they're going to sit for a while, maybe I should just play it, and then if I play it, I'm going to listen to it.
Yeah.
But Japanese copies theoretically have a very superior sound quality.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm curious. I have not played it yet. We're going to see where that goes. The other thing that's a sticking point for me, it does not have the OBI strip.
Yeah.
I was able to identify it from about 6 or 7 different Japanese presses from 78 because they all have different OBI strips. But what's very cool about this is the cover's a little bit different. It's got some things on there. But it also comes with a Japanese insert
Oh, yeah.
and a 12-page booklet of pictures from the era of Pink Floyd.
Wow. That is neat.
And a lot of that is in Japanese as well. So now the question then remains is, do I need 4 official copies of Dark Side of the Moon from the 70s? Simply because they're different countries.
Yeah, that is tough. It comes down to, I guess, when I would look at that Japanese and you have the later English version, personally, I'd say which one sounds the best. Keep that one, and the other one.
Until I find that first press in
Yes,
UK.
until you find that first, because if someone brings it in and asks you, hey, can I get $2 for this? Well, okay. And
I wouldn't do that. I paid for this one too.
Yes.
I paid for that one. So I think that's kind of where I'm leaning on this too. The UK version is cool, but it's not a first press UK.
Yeah, exactly.
And it doesn't have the stickers or the posters in it, where this one didn't come with posters, but it's got very cool inserts all the same. So ticket-wise on the Japanese, just in case you're curious, mid-range on that's about $160, and it goes upwards of about $300 in really good condition. But that $300 mark is going to be if it has the OBI strip.
So those listening, how many Dark Side of the Moons do you feel you need to have? How many do you have? Or do you have one, or are you one with 10, 20 of them? Because I know some collectors. You're right. Tons of those.
And we've talked before, I like the album, but I like other Pink Floyd albums more. It's just that this one, you're going to have more of an opportunity to pick up different pressings of it than you will others. So we'll kind of see. Now, overall, Pink Floyd Dark Side of the Moon-ish stuff, I did a count when I was looking at this. I've got the Flaming Lips version, I've got the reggae version, I've got some other tribute album versions, and then I've got 3 or 4 bootleg Floyd versions of the concert. So, and the one official.
And Richard Cheese used the cover.
And Richard Cheese as well. I've got that as well, but it's not a straight up Dark Side. It's just the cover. So the trials and tribulations of a vinyl collector. I say this all the time, owning a record store and being a collector when stuff like this comes in, is that I'm glad we don't sell ice cream and French fries here as well, because I'm already overweight, but I would be tremendously so.
Yeah.
So I'm dealing with this now. I don't have to move 4 copies of this, do I?
Yes, no, you don't have to move. You just have to find a room in your cabinet for it.
Somewhere we'll make room for that.
Yes.
So subject at hand, and I got to take the moment to say I'm going to miss you, man. Sundays, we joked online. I posted up the Spanky and Our Gang song, Sundays Will Never Be the Same, because you have been coming into the store now for, and I don't know how many years on Sundays.
Yeah, it has been the most consistent thing. It is just what I do. You get up, you have breakfast at a certain time, noon, I go to the record store. My wife's all good with it. Come in for my hour, sitting on a stool and just talking.
Yeah, we've been doing the podcast version of our talk now for 40 plus episodes.
Yeah.
Almost a year coming up on this one. But the relationship of you coming in and literally sitting and talking has been going on for years.
Yes, this is my cheers.
There we go. Steve!
That's right.
So it's going to be tough. We got a month left, but it's going to be tough. But I'm still looking forward to talking to you, especially for the podcast. We'll figure out a way to do it online.
Yep, definitely.
And it's just going to be a little more challenging. Speaking of challenging, though, what are you going through right now as you face this calendar down? 5 weeks, you said?
Yeah, 5 weeks for me to go out there. My wife, she'll probably mid-April or something, she'll stay home, continue to box. But I've already started and, going at it, at a pretty good pace. So she doesn't have tons to do. And it's just trying to find, the boxes, what is the best box to use, the expense of the different boxes. And there's so many types out there. And so I did a video on Thursday about this, just, my first trial with a box that was too big, too heavy. And, so I'm going to do another one is I bought some other boxes just to see what is the best, because so many of us move, so many record collectors move, and what works. And I had so many comments from people giving me suggestions and what to do and the best boxes. It seems that alcohol boxes work real good. I don't know how much alcohol you have to drink to get them, but I'll take 10 of those boxes of vodka there. Okay.
The problem is then you're going to end up buying more records after you consume the boxes of alcohol to have more to move. It's a circular problem.
Yeah, those record stores that are record store and a brewery, stay away. Just stay away.
This is not your first time moving a large amount of records, is it?
No, I have moved quite a bit in my career, and I've had a record collection ever since. This is the first time I am moving, though. In the past, it's been the company. I just call up, you say, okay, we're ready to move. A company comes in, they pack everything up, load it up, sayonara. Now, we're going to have someone move us out there, but to save a lot of money, it's easier if we pack it up and get it ready to go. So that's the different part now. I having to go out and find these boxes and, get them in and to see what's best and what can I lift. I don't have a good back, and so you can't be too heavy. I mean, the movers, they'll come in, it's a 200-pound box. Oh, what the heck? They don't care. Not me. No. So between that and books, it is a lot of stuff, but it's really right now looking at what do I need? What do I need to bring with me? Is there some stuff I don't have to have?
That's the dilemma I think a lot of collectors do face. I mean, we've talked on the podcast about why we collect.
Yeah.
The reasons that we do. We love it, but it's such a cumbersome hobby that it makes it difficult when times like this arise, and you have to determine, say, well, I love records, but holy cow, do I really love this many records?
Yeah, can I listen to these? And I've been going through my cubes one at a time, and I'm pulling out records that I haven't listened to for a long time. And remember, this is a newer collection. Since the flood, so it isn't like this is albums that have been sitting around for decades, but taking out different ones, putting them on, and do I really want this? I was listening, I only have 3 Eric Clapton albums. I was listening to all 3 of them. Do I need Eric Clapton? How often do I pull Eric Clapton? I like him. I appreciate his music. But is it something that I desire a lot? And I did keep all 3. But there's other ones that I'm kind of pulling. Some are some newer groups that, okay, I like. But how much it's just not important.
At the peak of your Michigan collection prior to the flood, you had, about 11,000 records?
Yeah, between CDs and records, it was over 12,000.
Wow.
Yeah, and I thank God that the flood wiped that out.
It's weird to hear you say it.
I know.
Thank God this flood destroyed my collection.
That flood has saved me so much time and effort. It was God was foreshadowing here, coming in and said, let's just get rid of it for him. He doesn't know it, but in the future, he's going to be thanking me for this.
Where do you sit about now? Where do you think your numbers are?
Around 3,000. Which
is manageable.
It is. It is manageable. Easily, I can get it all packed up. But now, what comes into mind more as I get older, what am I doing with it? I have no one that really wants my records in my family. So and my wife doesn't know what to do with it. And since I'm not going to be here to sell them to you, for a decent price, because I know what others offer, it's now I'm thinking what is even more manageable. In the future, I could do record shows. I could bring them to record shows and try that just as something to do. But what do I want? And It's luckily, I've gotten to that point in a hobby where I can sit back and say, I don't need to have it all. And I obviously, certain groups, like Velvet Underground, I buy pretty much everything. The Cramps, Iggy and the Stooges. I got multiple copies of some of those. I had 3 albums, and I got multiple copies of them, but they're OGs. So,
Yep.
But for the most part, I don't do that anymore.
Now, my last big personal move with a record collection was in 1997. It's kind of weird to say that I've been down here in mid-Michigan,
Yeah.
and that was from the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. And prior to that, I think, coming out of college, Kim and I lived in a smaller little cottage on Lake Superior, and that's when my collection really started to grow. And then we moved about 20 miles away to a little town outside of Marquette, and I took them with me. It was a smaller house, but the collection still started to grow. And when we moved out of that house in Negaunee, we came down to the mid-Michigan area, and that's where I had to make this decision. At the time, I think my collection had gone in those early years, in the mid-'90s, had gone up to about 3,000 or 4,000 records.
Yeah, wow.
And it was also a difficult decision, and I think I culled about 2/3 of it at that time. And I remember selling a bunch off to some friends up in the Upper Peninsula who, oddly enough, I think sold them back to me when I opened the store back up down here, in some cases, Dino Don. But I really made that conscious decision at that point to pare it down, not only because we knew we were going to be renting a smaller house, we had to have a storage unit. I was hesitant to have records in a storage unit. So I kept just the super important. And I think from that point in time, I knocked it down from that about 3,000.
And now what I think it makes it even harder is because of Discogs, now we look and see, oh, God, that's worth a lot of money. I mean, there's some albums that, when I listen to this, maybe not, but wow, that's worth some money. And it makes it even harder.
Oh, it's even harder when you go and what did I get rid of that one for?
Yeah,
Why did I get rid of that? So that is the one thing. I mean, that's the last time, and I don't remember how or what we did to move. Obviously, it was boxes and crates, and we rented a U-Haul type of thing and brought them down here. But that was us doing it ourselves. Now, the other side of that, saying, okay, well, here's a guy who pared the collection down. I've built it back up to a couple thousand already again.
Yeah.
Already. Listen, it's been 20-some years, but already. But I have had the opportunity to move a record store. And additionally, with that, I buy collections. Once a year, I usually buy, a collection of a couple thousand. The biggest several years ago was 8,000 records that I got from over in the thumb of Michigan, like 45 minutes away.
Yeah.
That took a few trips with the pickup, but a lot of boxes in that case too. So I'm no stranger to packing records up and moving them around. Yeah. It's just that it's not technically a move personally that's happening.
Yeah. In the 80s when we moved, my records were all in milk crates. Yeah. So it was really easy. I mean, that's what, for those of you older, you know what we're talking about. You stored everything in milk crates. That was the perfect record. And you could stack the milk crates on top of each other, easy peasy moving. Well, we don't do that anymore. So now it's to find the right type of boxes. Amazon has these specific boxes that are designed for records. And when you go to record shows, you see them. They're the white boxes. Yep. A lid flips on them. They are the perfect size. They're easy to carry. And they're extremely sturdy. I mean, the way they're made, you don't use tape, but yet they're super sturdy. But they average about $10 a box.
Not feasible.
Yeah, it makes it very, very difficult. I brought in some of them to try to see, and I love them. But it's very expensive.
They make sense for record dealers who are hauling them back and forth to shows. But if you're using these once, I mean, is there going to be another move in your future?
Yeah, probably not. I hope not. And at least with them, you can break them down easy, and you can store them flat if you don't need them. So then U-Haul, I have to check the prices, but a lot of people have recommended U-Haul boxes. Yep. They say they're excellent, they fit right. And I used to, I had 3 men in a truck do move once. Before the big flood, we had a small flood, and we had to redo our basement. They had to come in, they do a trenching down there. So I had to pack up the whole collection. I had 3 men in a truck come in with boxes and boxed it all up because I was traveling to Puerto Rico and work, and I had no time to do this. So their boxes fit perfect for that also. I guess Home Depot has good boxes that are perfect for records. I mean, the key is really to get something that you can easily lift and carry and move around and not break your back.
The U-Haul boxes are ones that I probably would recommend. That's what I use here at the store. When I've gotten those bigger collections, there was one collection, it was the 8,000 some odd collection. When I got there, they had some in boxes. They had some in suitcases, literally packed in suitcases. So I bought a bunch of those U-Haul boxes. They will hold maybe 75 to 100 records, which is no slouch on the weight.
Yeah.
But what I found is if you can get a good piece of duct tape or packing tape, you tape the bottom of the U-Haul box and you're gentle. The handles work. It's got those prefab pop-out handles. They work, but if you jerk that quick, those handles are gone and you got to carry it by the bottom anyway. But a little bit of tape and some very gentle moving, which if you're using movers, you can't quite guarantee that. But I found that the U-Haul boxes work. In fact, I still have, a dozen or so in the back rooms here filled with records that I find occasionally.
Yeah, exactly. with dryer sheets in there from the past few years. Yeah, one of the people that watched the video, their comment was, they said, think how much you pay for those Zamrock albums and a lot of your albums in your collection, and they go, so do you really think you can't afford those nice Amazon boxes when you look at what you pay for your records and how expensive? And that was a good point, just to making sure, hey, they're kept nice and, that, everything, so nothing happens to them. Yeah.
All it takes is for one little piece of cardboard to give way in the transit between your record room and the moving truck, and bam, into a Michigan snowbank it goes. And, I can see that.
Yep. Another person recommended, this was a good recommendation, is your most expensive albums, take those with you. Do not put them on the moving truck, just in case.
Yeah.
You hold on to them. And there is, that could, I'm going to start, pulling those, certain, OGs out there. A lot of them bought at your local radio, Wasteland. The punk collection.
Yes. The important stuff. I mean, that makes more sense because, you want to trust movers coming in, but at the same time, you really want to make sure that you're protecting the important things.
Yes.
Well, it doesn't go for records, I would imagine, for just about anything else.
Well, yeah. And people have horror stories of one box missing. Suddenly, where's it at? And I even remember a move where it seemed like I was missing some stuff. It happens. You don't know what's going on, and maybe I misplaced it. I don't know. So, I thought that was a really good suggestion, and we're going to probably get that set up sooner than later. And I just keep that to the side. I can pull those and listen to whenever I want.
Well, the good news is now you've got some of those more expensive Amazon boxes to hold the important goodies.
Yeah.
And all of your Ozark Mountain and your Joan Collins stuff, you can put it into U-Haul boxes.
Right. And those boxes will be going to the local radio Wasteland. Just take them.
Gee, thanks.
Just take them. I don't even want anything for them.
Now, the nightmare of that, and I say nightmare, but it's not really. It's tedious when you do this. It could be a nightmare if you do it incorrectly, but just tedious. We have been in business now. We just celebrated our 7th year as a record store. And the first few years were in a smaller space. You started coming to us when we were in the smaller spot, right? So in 2019, pre-closure weirdness, we had an opportunity to move to a much larger space. And the idea of moving a record store from that much smaller was something that scared the living crap out of me, especially since we were doing it in the span of 6 to 7 days prior to a Black Friday event.
Oh, wow.
We moved the record store from one location to another and opened up on Black Friday after closing the Sunday before, which was weird. But now the good thing was, and for those of you who are familiar with our store and the layout, we just moved from one part of our building that we rent to another part of the building. So the move wasn't, nuts, we got to pack up tens of thousands of records in a truck and move them across town. It was like, let me carry a few boxes over tonight and
Yeah.
move them. So we got lucky. I look at some of these record stores. There was one in Grand Rapids that just moved recently.
Yes.
And I'm just in awe at how they could pull something like that off. There's another one in Green Bay. I know the guy there. They moved about a year or two ago. And I'm in awe that they were able to pull that together and do it, knowing what we did just to move from one part of a building to another.
Yeah. Well, and especially when you go into a bigger one, fixtures and everything, trying to get all that. Look, where am I going to put? Okay, I'm in a small space now. I need a whole bunch more stuff to be able to fill up my store.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, we did. Well, we had it because I did have a storage unit as well. But the fixtures that we have, I've had. These actually came from our friend Bill Young.
Yeah.
Way back when we started the store, he helped out when we got a hold of these. But here's the real dirty secret. When we moved the record racks, we got a hold of some very heavy moving equipment, some real high-end stuff. And this is going to sound horrible, but we left the record racks loaded and put the moving things underneath it and lifted it up about 3 inches and rolled them.
Okay.
Fully loaded record racks that weighed, a couple thousand pounds, it feels like. And luckily it worked. Luckily it worked because we've got 10 record racks full of that. So.
Well, it's kind of, especially the way the doors go, trying to turn them in that.
It barely fit, but it fit.
Wow.
So, it was tough, but it's not as tough as having to box every single thing up, empty all the record racks out, move the racks, fill the boxes, put them back in the racks when you get to the new place and everything too. And we've talked before too about, maybe the Wasteland would do better in a better location. And I have a lot of customers say, you need to move downtown or you need to move to this higher traffic area. And Kim's like, nope. And I kind of said, yeah, I kind of agree. I like it here. The location is not the best, but at the same time, I really don't want to pack this stuff up and move it.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't collect a lot of CDs of that anymore, but I did find, if you buy from Amazon, so you get, the record comes in a box, but they usually take that record box, if they put it in a box, and they put it in a bigger box. They're kind of longer, but those really work if it's just high enough. Great for CDs.
Okay.
You can, the CDs will fit. You can stand them up in there perfectly. It worked great. With what I do have for CDs, I was able to do that and load up a number of these boxes that I still had saved. It worked, nice and tight and looked really good.
What kind of a time frame? Is this something you're pecking away at nights and weekends?
It is. When I'm at home, I might do a couple boxes, and so slowly but surely, still I'm trying to do my YouTube channel, which is talking about records that are all now in a box. But I do have a lot of records that I have yet to show. And some of these I've had for over a year, just sitting in my to show box. It's just getting around to it because something else comes I want to show. So it's leaving those out, but you'd hate to have just this blank wall behind you, but eventually that's what it's going to be, because I do want to have it done before I go, between that and getting through all my books.
Are you taking everything with you in March with the initial move, or is that something that's going to go as you go down the line?
Yeah. My initial move is going to be a suitcase with clothes for about a week, and that I will wash. I'm not going down. I'm flying out there, and so when I
got to get to work.
Yes, I got to get to work. Exactly. I retire on a Friday. I have my birthday on a Saturday, and I fly to Denver on Sunday. Wow. So, go to work on Monday. So my 2-day retirement is going to be excellent. But I'll be working for my son. Maybe that'll be like retired. I don't know. He keeps telling me, "Oh, Dad, you want there's spots. These shelves will work great to bring in your records." I don't know if I want my records in there, but so it's I want to have it done before I go, so my wife doesn't have to worry about that. Between the books and this, I went through the 2 huge bookshelves, and I bet you I took out about 3/4 of these books I won't bring. I loved them. I always wanted this library, but I'll never read them again.
Yeah.
It's just it comes, and some of them I just read, and I'm thinking, am I a moron? I just read this and I'm getting rid of it. And we might try, Facebook Marketplace to see if I can move some out. It's, it all takes time, and time is not a luxury.
If you ever really want to read them again, you can look them up on your iPad or something like that.
I've heard about that. Kindle readers.
Yeah.
There's this crazy stuff that people use.
Which technically you could do with Spotify and the records too. if you
Oh,
think
really?
about it.
Yeah. What? Yeah,
Yeah.
technically you could do that. Yes.
I don't know about this. So, I don't envy you in that way, shape, or form, because I do know what it's like to move, but it's never pleasant, but it's something that's necessary.
It is, and that's just part of life. Sometimes, some people live in the same place their whole life, and we knew eventually that we would move. I mean, I have no reason to be in Michigan with no family, no connections to Michigan except a record store. So, eventually you got to go. It just worked out. It just was a sudden thing, and it's like, okay, I guess I will retire now.
Well, I'm going to miss you, man. But
Yep.
we've got 5 weeks left of this funness to work with.
Exactly.
And I think we do have a road trip we're going to take.
Yes, we do.
So what do you folks think? Have you ever had to move a collection? And if your collection is in the 200 to 300 range, that makes it a little easier, right?
Yeah.
Versus that several thousand, now all of a sudden you're challenging.
Thank God it's not 12,000 still.
Well, the floods, the floodwaters came and washed away your
My troubles were washed away.
That would have been, I think you would be pulling your hair out even further, going, "What am I going to do with this many records
And magazines.
and everything else
God.
under too?" So what do you folks think? Is it tough to move? Would you pare down your collection? I think we've all gone through that, and I mentioned that we did when I moved from the UP. Knocked it down a lot, but then you get the fun of rebuilding it if you so desire.
I'm not going to go to your extreme.
Thanks. It was fairly extreme at that point. So as we wrap up this week, Steve, would you like me to dig out one of those Move albums to play for you?
I think so. That sounds fantastic.
It's ELO essentially,
Yeah,
right?
okay, yes,
So we'll
it
call
is.
it ELO if it makes you feel better.
Yes.
Instead of The Move.
Move.
The one that I wanted to show you, somebody picked up. It was actually a moving truck on the front of the record.
Oh,
It was
wow, yeah.
the best of the Move.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, it's like you really want to see. Yeah, thanks, Jim. All right,
Yep,
fine, I
fine.
get it. Well, you folks have been listening to two guys talking about records, a vinyl community podcast.
And I'm Steve, a record collector.
And I'm Jim, a record store owner. And we will talk to you next week. And I don't know what the subject matter is. We'll have to get into that.
Yeah, eventually.
correct.
On Saturday. We'll figure it out.
Let's move it on up.
Yes.
Thanks.
Bye.